especially Facebook and WhatsApp, as their primary source of information. So anything that happens can easily and simultaneously be transmitted across the country, making it extremely easy to mobilize politically, to make people angry and make them move in a particular direction. And I think that the NRM government is Jurassic. It lives in the land of Pangaea when dinosaurs still ruled the world. That's 60 million years ago. It has not yet dragged itself into the 21st century to understand how do you manage urban, educated populations in the age of social media. The third, and this is quite tragic, this election has taken place at a moment when, internal to the NRM, there has been what I would call institutional atrophy. There is no internal infrastructure for counter mobilization, one for counter communication and counter political mobilization. I'll give you an example. When Kale Kaihura was still at the police, what he had done is had effectively penetrated the different hotspots of Kampala and the leaders of those hotspots, who could be FDC, Defiance, in that case People, or today People Power. Having infiltrated these groups, he had created allies there. So he could have prior information of what they are planning. He could counter mobilize, intervene and counter mobilize. I think the people who fought him thought that this infrastructure, he had built it alongside President Kagame, or so they claimed, that in order to overthrow
alongside the government. Who?
You see, the intelligence people who fought Kale accused him of saying, you see, to defeat Kale in the internal power struggle, they accused him of being Kagame's agent, an agent
in Uganda, working in
Kagame.
Uganda.
Yes. And that this infrastructure was aimed at overthrowing President Museveni. So Kagame was working through Kale to overthrow the government. That's the accusation they made. And they won. But in winning, they worked hard to destroy the very infrastructure which he had built for NRM, even though using a state institution called the police. They dismantled that infrastructure. So two things happened that led to this arbitrary use of violence. When they arrested bobiwine, the security chiefs involved, police, let's say, largely police, but the army, police, the entire security infrastructure of Uganda, did not have a plan B. If you arrest him, they did not anticipate what would be the consequences of such an action. What are the plans of the supporters of Bobi Wine, the supporters of Defiance, and the supporters of the wider opposition? Because the opposition also had plans.
You're saying they didn't have a plan, but the security minister was right on that chair last week, and he said they had intelligence of these plans, and they were only waiting, and he said these people, the so-called rioters, just entered an ambush.
Either Tumwina was deliberately lying or was misinformed, either of those two. You know why? Because, let me tell you, the nature of this violence is going to decline with time. If you walk around, you are seeing how government has started deploying. They will have military police, they will have the army, they will have police occupy practically every hotspot. And with the time, it will be difficult for anybody planning to riot to actually move. So I know how government, if they had prior knowledge of these plans, actually I think they had prior knowledge of these plans, it's simply that it was not operationalized. Everybody knew there was a plan B. Besigye has been preaching plan B. So it isn't that the riot came out of the blue. It is simply that the intelligence themselves did not plan for the likely implications of arresting Bobi Wine wherever they arrested him on security situation in Kampala. So they were shocked by the speed with which people mobilized to protest and riot. They intervened in a panic without prior planning, because you see, when you are containing a riot, you must employ two tools. There is a short-term tool of using the security forces to achieve a short-term goal of stability. There is the medium to long-term, which is counter-political mobilization. So in those hotspots, they do not have their own infrastructure to counter-mobilize politically, to buy, to cajole, to bribe, to intimidate, to blackmail, to arrest ringleaders in advance. They didn't have any infrastructure at all. That's why it went the way it went. So they employed a lot of violence. So this violence is a sign of the increasing reliance on the security services and the decreasing use of something called siasa, which NRM was expert at. Siasa is politics, political mobilization. So if you have not politically mobilized people, and if you don't have your own message, because NRM is very weak on message right now, they may have a great manifesto, which one of our panelists here, Bobi, helped write, But how much have they articulated their vision of Uganda to the public to win over young people who are rioting? Very little. So they have not been involved in serious political mobilization. They had already deactivated their own political infrastructure for to demobilize the rioters, and then they had to rely on one arm, the hammer, and that's why it became a disaster. In many ways, they walked directly into the trap of bobiwine, because if anybody has benefited from all this chaos, it is bobiwine. The violence has diminished the credibility and legitimacy of the NRM and enhanced his statement and his stature as a person fighting a dictator fighting for freedom.
Okay.
Even the venue is a problem. The police has chosen to be the ones to choose a venue, and they can change it, refuse you to reach the venue, and on the way accuse you of not adhering to the SOPs.
Okay. Yes.
If I may.
Yes, Council.
The people of this country lost faith in the government when the NRM, in spite of complaining about COVID, organized elections, primary elections, in the way that they did. People were lining up, people were crowded. The NRM has itself not actually adhered to these guidelines. If you watch campaign videos for the Minister of Health, for several other people. So the people of this country lost faith in the fact that COVID was a serious matter, because we sacrificed lives in favor for elections. And so people don't believe it anymore. Secondly, Charles, we can pick and choose about people power, Chagolanyi not wearing a mask. Just go downtown. Life has returned to normal. We're only enforcing guidelines in respect of opposition political actors. All other elements of society are not adhering to these guidelines. In fact, nobody believes in them anymore. And I think that it is unfair to pick out a man who has even sung a song about coronavirus to warn people and not reflect on how people here have lost faith because of the conduct of the state. Nobody believes that COVID is a serious matter. People, in fact, believe that COVID is now being used as a political tool in much the same way that Public Order Management Act was used, the Police Act was used, to whip the political opposition.
But Charles, just a brief one.
Yeah.
You see, Nicholas, this is where I would disagree with you. You see, the opposition have positioned themselves as the agents of change. They have told us that the NRM has ruled this country through lies, deceit, fraud, and greed, self-interest, in complete disregard to the public good. I think that the opposition need to be the change they say they are.
They should give a better example.
In the last 3 weeks, I have lost 4 members of my immediate family to COVID. So I know what COVID means. If you are Robert Kyagulanyi, you are promoting change, and you are addressing a crowd of 20,000-30,000 people packed together like sardines in a field without masks, without any social distancing, clearly knowing that they are going to spread COVID and kill themselves, and you don't mind about their death, all you mind is about you getting into power. You really want to convince anybody that you represent that change, or you are like any other opportunistic politician who cares all about getting into power? You don't give a damn about what happens to your own supporters. I don't mind NRM crowding them like that, because that is the criticism we should make of NRM. You are selfish, you don't care about the public good, you are looting the state, you are not investing in healthcare, you are not doing this. This is your argument every day. Now, say you NRM people, you are not respecting your SOPs, you are killing your own people. For us, we want change, and we are not selfish leaders. We care about the public good. We would rather lose by upholding the public good than win by killing the entire population.
Okay.
I think
Fair
the
enough.
opposition have failed to lead, and that is why I can tell you this opposition you see here in Uganda, exactly like NRM. Exactly like NRM. There is no difference.
Okay. Councillor Pio, you want to respond to that?
Not really. Not
Okay,
really.
good. Mr. Gobi, you have had the some of the causes of the violence as they are currently. Even going by the official sources of 54 already dead Ugandans, it's big enough. Even one person over a fight for power. What do you think should be the avenue that all sides should take in order to get back, especially this next 6 weeks, to the proper line. And we have an election that is free of blood flow, an election that is free of death because of campaigns, and an election that can be termed credible.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. So you want me to be the one to provide solutions?
Because you're a professor.
Incredible. First, let me also
Heavy is the head that wears a
look
crown.
at why we have reached where we are today.
Yeah.
A bit of that contribution also. I think there is a convergence of factors. But to me, 3 key factors, because we've had the violence before, as we have been discussing on this show. We have had the violence since 2001, when at least I've been cautious.
In fact, even 1996 election was violent.
96, I was a kid, I don't remember.
If you speak to Semogere.
I was being locked in a house. I didn't know what was going on. But since 2001, I've been following these things. But I think why the violence has really multiplied now. Number one is anger. And we talked about it. Anger on both sides of the political spectrum. Ugandans are angry. And they are getting angrier. And this anger has, of course, a source. And to me, it is the one which is driving the campaigns. You can see the way candidates are speaking. Every candidate is angry. They are not, I don't see any smiles anymore. I don't see, it's like a war. And this message has gone to the supporters. There are a lot of anger messages going around. And these perhaps could be as a result of, again, the bad economy itself. You know, as an economist, sometimes I get so much biased in that, but the economy is bad for a number of people, especially younger people who are home, broke, they don't have a job. And this has been worsened by the COVID. The COVID impact. There are no bars. You know, sometimes people go to bars and
they forget problems.
They drink themselves, you know, to
Out
some mindset. There are no parties. You know, in other words, you know, people's lives have. There is a lot of idleness also amongst, you know, younger people. So we are seated down on phones, sending this. So when they hear that your candidate has been arrested, it becomes very easy to mobilize spontaneously, and you find everybody is getting out of a house to go and protest this. To me, these shouldn't be underlooked. But now the underlying things which we discussed even last week on this, some of them have been mentioned by the guests. The issue of involving the armed forces with live bullets to these younger people whom anger has really turned into individuals who are willing to commit even treason for fun. You saw one time they threw stones to the presidential convoy, and some of them were shot.
That's the Kampala and Tebe Road?
No.
Arua.
In Arua in 2018. Now, recently you see that when you look at the messages these younger people are sending, they are really incredible. So I've been looking around and asking myself, why are we getting so angry as Ugandans, at least some Ugandans, to the point that many younger people are getting braver, they are getting hyper-focused, they are kind of getting also ready to fight battles. They know they are going to lose, but they don't care. You see a younger man attacking, not even a policeman, but a military man putting on a uniform, has a gun cocked, and this guy is saying, I can even box you. I saw, these videos, and I said, is this Uganda or not? So as we are really looking at these things we urge as elites, let us go back and discuss and find out these underlying factors which has made these younger people so angry. And to me, sometimes when people's desires, goals and expectations are not met, it can actually foment anger. And I think so many of these younger people, they think that, and they have been, because they have never seen any other government. Even us who are adults, we haven't seen any other government. So you think this is the worst place to be, because you have finished school, you haven't gotten a job. And most of these presidential aspirants, they're actually telling them one thing, that the problem of Uganda is Yoweri Museveni. He has been around for so long, he has failed to do everything. So but don't you think that is a strong message for the opposition? Even if I were the one campaigning against President Museveni now, yes,
I would use that mantra.
Of course.
Because it is his weakest point at the time.
It's the truth.
And especially if, like Honorable Dombo confirmed, they are not countering. The issue then becomes, why is the NRM not failing on the response to the propaganda, to the lies? If you say they are lies, actually you should use the facts.
Andrew talked about it. There are weaknesses within the NRM party in terms of explaining their story. Because, let me tell you, NRM has transformed this country. Even those who are opposing it know where the country was and where it is now. And even if you look at things, in a kind of sequence, how the security of the country was, Uganda is a secure country, and Ugandans are free. Ugandans have freedom to do certain things, to express themselves relative to the level of the development of the country. But so many younger people think this is the worst place to live. They think that actually Uganda hasn't done much in changing the destiny of and the progress of the human beings who are living in this society. So as a result of that, you find that this one person who has become now the campaign issue, President Museveni, has also equally become angry. He's getting angry because, no human being on earth loves to be accused and criticized all the time of things which they know that they are not correct, or they know that they haven't contributed to directly as themselves. And to that matter, not even, let alone President Museveni, because he's used to being admired, to being revered, to being, praised, because that was the Museveni of the yesteryears. But over years, we have seen that his campaign now is almost being spearheaded by himself alone and a few other people. The party does not have a good kind of team to explain some of these things in a very convincing way to these younger people that, look, we have sequentially secured the country, we have fixed the infrastructure gap, and now we are working on livelihoods in that order. And this is where you would be part of now this going into the future to benefit into this. That manifesto has that message, but that message is not getting to the younger people.
The problem right now is political, it is economic, it is jobs demand, it is, maybe levels of unemployment, which is, of course, which affects everywhere. But in this case, it is our situation. So how do you handle that? Why is NRM failing to preach that good message that, see, this is obvious, we have done this?
I want actually to begin, I think that Ramadan was raising a fundamental point. which
All of you are raising fundamental points.
well,
Fundamental.
everyone has raised fundamental points, but I was attracted to what he was saying.
Yeah.
I want to begin by giving an analogy. You see, the popular support or lack of support of your government has very little to do with its economic performance. It has a lot to do with its political and ideological positioning. I'll give you an example. The most transformative leader I know, if you read economic history, in the history of man, or in the history of economic development, I think has been General Park Chung-hee of South Korea. He came to power in May 1961, and he was assassinated in 1979, after 19 years, rather 18 years. In those 18 years, he transformed South Korean society from a backward, very poor peasant society into a rich, modern industrial complex in a very short time. But as factories started producing cars, semiconductors, and electronics, they were also producing militancy. As universities in South Korea were producing teachers, lawyers, engineers, architects, they were also producing student insurgency. Across the country, he was besieged by so much protest during his political career that finally he was killed by his own security chief because they could not contain the protests that were taking place. So economic transformation produced social forces or social groups with a vested interest in removing him from power. Why? Because being a military man, he did not back his economic policies and transformation agenda with the politics. Now, I'll give you an example of Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew is the exact opposite. He is one of the most successful leaders in history, transforming a society from a third world country into a modern society. I think Singapore has the second highest manufacturing per capita of any country in the world after Switzerland. So he transformed it, but because he was a politician, he kept his economic transformation in step with political mobilization. What has Museveni failed to do? Museveni has been very successful economically in terms of reordering, first of all, reconfiguring the state and reconstructing the economy of Uganda. That process has led to urbanization, mass education, increasing economic opportunities. If you look at different welfare indicators, any Ugandan today can go to any shop anywhere in the village and find practically every type of consumer good. So the scarcities we've confronted when we were young of basic goods like sugar, salt, soap have ended. You can find bottled beer, you can find bottled practically everything. In the most remote part of Uganda, all modern industrial goods will be there. And one of the things about welfare is the ability to have choice to access anything. If you want a television, if you want a good mattress or a blanket in the deepest village. What NRM has failed is it has suffered what I would call ideological atrophy. There is no longer faith internal to the NRM in its own achievements. The NRM leaders don't believe in their own achievements. Museveni, when he's speaking...
Did you say they don't believe in their achievements?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Because you see,
why is that
for a system, let me tell you, Charles, you see, for a system to retain the zest and the enthusiasm it has, it must have faith. There must be a faith, and I don't think NRM leaders have faith. NRM has degenerated into a cash and carry government. Everybody is interested only in making money. No one is interested in the ideals that were the foundation of this movement.
Okay.
The largest number of leaders are interested, how can I go, hold a second please Charles, how can I go benefit? Because there's another example I want to give of Julius Nyerere. Julius Nyerere took over Tanzania in 1961. By 1985, it had been the worst performing economy in the whole world, not in Africa, in the whole world. GDP of Tanzania declined by 45% in those 24 years. But people still loved him because there is a way he structured his politics that even where he failed, people felt he was trying his best to improve their livelihoods, but he made mistakes. So there was this sense that he's working for us. I think that I have seen videos of President Museveni saying, me, I work for myself and my children. I mean, I am not a servant of anybody. And his statements, made carelessly, feed into the narrative that this guy is not committed to serving you. And if you listen to bobiwine, he has this continuous attack on Museveni directly, saying, you promised this, you didn't do it, you promised this, you didn't do it. I think that the president needs to position himself as, I am here to serve you, the people of Uganda.
Can he do that in 1.5 months now?
Well, I think that, first of all, I believe that Museveni is going to win the election nonetheless. I think that a lot of the opposition to him that we see is urban-based, and two, bobiwine and the other opposition lack the necessary organizational infrastructure to uproot NRM. You see, an election is like a war. In war, we have two forms of fighting. You have the infantry and you have the air force. If you read books on military strategy, they will tell you strategic bombardment, so area bombing, does not lead you to victory. You need to have troops on the ground to occupy every foot of ground that you have bombed. I think what bobiwine has is air power. He can bomb from the air. What Museveni has is ground troops who are occupying the ground. So when it comes to actual voting and balloting and counting the vote, I think the people power people will, the new people will really be shocked.
Can I say something to that, Andrew? I think I will agree with you that given what I've seen, I've moved around this country, and given the incumbency benefit, Museveni will win. The question that we are discussing here, and for the benefit and future of this country, at what cost? Must it be at the cost of lives? That you must win an election at the cost of lives? And that's why we are looking for solutions that can we say, President Museveni, you have good points to talk about. But why is it that the people are not being communicated to these good points? Nicholas, I want to bring you immediately.
Very good question.
But let's go for a break. I can see exactly the top of the hour. Let's go for a break. When we come back, I'll bring Councillor Nicholas Opio to respond to the debate. And from the break, this is Behind the Headlines on UBC. And we are discussing the topic, the issues. We are taking a look or a reflection of the issues that are shaping the 2021 elections or campaigns. And the guests in the studio, we have Honorable Nabila Nagai, MP, Woman MP Kampala. We have Councillor Nicholas Opio, a human rights advocate. We have Andrew MUWENDA,
Correct.
a veteran journalist. We have Bobi Ramadan, who is a lecturer, economics lecturer at Makerere University Business School. On the line by Zoom, we are joined by Honorable Dombo Emmanuel, who is the Director of Communication at the NRM Secretariat and is all the way in Butaleja, and that's why his line is not very fine. I think Butaleja people should find out why their network is not very good and whether they are part of Uganda. Find out from MTN and Airtel. And Margaret Muhanga, a panelist on this show, joining us all the way from Fort Portal City. And when it rains in Fort Portal, the network becomes so poor. Again, trouble there. We need to find out whether you deserve to be a city with that quality of network. But before we, let me bring in Nicholas. Wanted to respond to the issues raised by MUWENDA before we went to the break, and then I'll bring in Nagai and Margaret Muhanga. Nicholas, go for it.
Charles, I have heard the argument being made, and I think that both you and Andrew are, I think, guilty of this. Said Museveni will win. It's an open political contestation. Every candidate has a chance to win.
True.
Let the best player win. Yeah. But the important point that I wanted to make was the point that I've heard being made, that this party has no network in the villages. They're urban based. These are urban poor, who are angry. They have no jobs. Two things are important, Charles. A couple of days ago, there was an RDC in an NRM shirt in an RDC's office with a Museveni poster in his background telling bobiwine is not welcome in the city. A few months back, there was Eric Sakwa in Jinja who declared that that is his city. Basically, cannot go to his city. You beat up people out of villages. You use RDCs, DISOs, and GISOs to lock them out of villages. Then you accuse them of not being in the villages. For me, I find that very, very interesting. But the second point that I wanted to make, and perhaps to respond to what Honorable Emmanuel Dombo said, and perhaps a bit of reflection is important. When a Lebanese businessman opened up a pizza shop in this country, a former government minister addressed the press and says, this is the achievement of the NRM government.
That was,
you can have Jim
for the record, Honorable Jim Wezi.
He says you can have the same pizza you have in New York, now in Kampala. That's the achievement of the NRM. It is that sort of shallowness their inability to communicate the party's position that causes the party a problem. Now you have Emmanuel Dombo, the director of communications, saying the NRM brought for you social media. Really? We have to have a bit of respect for the viewers. And I think two other things are important to say. The people in the NRM are smelling an opportunity, Charles. In the NRM primaries, you saw family feuds.
True. People
see Museveni as a setting sun. They are positioning themselves to take over, even within the NRM. And so I think that nobody wants to sink with the ship. And people are careful and cautious. And others, of course, are making money. There is a real opportunity for transition, and everybody is seeing it, both within the NRM and outside the NRM. And this, in so many ways, has informed the discussion that we are having. Secondly, you asked the question, what should be done? I think there has to be a change of narrative, Charles. Andrew has spent his time calling people rioters. What that does is paint the entire group of people who are protesting a legitimate political concern about the arrest of their leader, many of whom were not actually armed, were not even burning tires. Many of them were just angry and were shouting, were singing, were heckling in town. Now, all of that is being called riots. It's a very small section of society that was involved in criminality, and that has to be condemned. But we cannot lump everybody else as a rioter, because the point then you make by calling them rioters is to delegitimize the concern they had, and nobody now talks about it, the violence meted out on their candidates. The second thing is President Museveni, in fact, has a higher responsibility. When he speaks, talks about crushing. When he speaks the language of violence. As a leader who has been around for a very long time, I don't think he inspires peace, he inspires war. When children hear him speak, when my daughter hears him speak, she doesn't see a president, she just sees a soldier who is out to crush. What do you then expect if the language of the regime is crush? You have soldiers saying we can't hand over power to you. You have soldiers coming to TV say this is a war. What else do you expect? I think that we must ask of him a lot more than we're asking of non-state actors, because he's the president, he's the head of state. And if we change narratives, we begin to speak the language of political contestations, we perhaps can have a decent discussion. But I think that on the current tone, on both sides, one has inspired even worse. And so we have to de-escalate if we're to have a meaningful discussion towards the election. And talks about NRM not having infrastructure, not responding. On social media, NRM bots are the most vicious in mudslinging campaigns. When I came into the studio, Andrew asked me that he was told I was in exile. That I'd taken exile, I'd taken Bobi's kids, I'm going to be an asylum seeker in the US. There's one from Chenjojo who is wheelchair bound, his medical bills are being picked. But there's a vicious campaign. I know where some of them sit. On both sides, we must de-escalate, because we can't run politics in the way that it's being
good
run.
And that proposal to de-escalate is most important. But there is someone who has sent a joke from Pakwach and says that statement of Honorable Dombo of we brought social media is akin to the one when they said that NRM brought the eclipse in Pakwach.
The president was the chief viewer.
Honorable Margaret Muhanga, I am told, I gather your network quality is now better.
May I make a response? May I make a response on that, Bwana Odongso?
Muhanga, is your line now better? Unmute.
It's okay.
Okay. If it is better, I need to make a follow-up. Nicholas introduces another issue in the discussion. The question of transition that is partly a cause for this violence that we are seeing. And he follows that by saying that the violence actually started from your party primaries, not just in this election. So there is nothing new that we are seeing. Is that what you think is the situation?
I wanted to come in
I
now.
think the violence has always been there. Ugandans enjoy violence, I guess. And also social liberties. Social liberties have been liberalized. Everybody thinks they own Uganda and they can do whatever they want. When Andrew Mwenda talked about Lee Kuan Yew and how he transformed Singapore, I remembered one thing, that Lee Kuan Yew was a high-handed man. These things of demonstrations, social liberties, that I can do whatever I want, did not exist in Singapore. Actually, to make matters worse for Singapore, many young girls who are finishing university were failing to get married. And so the government was losing a good category of people who could join the service and work. Because whenever they were given jobs, they were underperforming just because every man would not marry an educated woman. And so therefore, President Lee Kuan Yew or Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew would matchmake a person. The government imagine going up to matchmaking an individual with another to get married, such that these young women would be a social capital and also work in the service, grow it, and that's what happened in Singapore. That level of high-handedness has never existed, I think, anywhere in the world. But to go back to your point, Charles, it takes two to tango. If people don't come to the streets, nobody is going to beat them. No one is going to tear gas them. And also, I want you to remember and to stop making comparisons with the people who are in Chikubo, people who are in markets, that they are also crowded. People who are in Chikubo and markets are looking for a livelihood. But people who go for rallies are simply going to see a candidate. You can listen to this candidate. It's choice. You can listen to this candidate on radio, on TV. You don't have to go to their rallies to pick COVID. But it's a matter of livelihood that people go to the markets. And so people must have self-discipline. We have talked about this several times. Last week we had Professor Rhoda. She said people must refrain themselves from going to places where they would rather have not gone. That is what self-discipline means. They've told you hospitals are overwhelmed. They are all full. There are no more beds for COVID patients. For heaven's sake, what takes you to a rally to run behind a candidate? I actually tweeted last week how I do my rallies. And I call few people. We social distance. Everyone wears a mask. We speak for a short time and everybody dispatches. But bringing these people together as a leader, congesting them in a place and encouraging them to follow you, I think doesn't show any sign of leadership. I want to concur with Andrew, and I think Dr. Bobi, that Museveni will win. Not only will he win, but he will win very highly. That one is known. And for you, Opio, Council Opio, to downplay the structures of the NRM, you're just joking. I saw Odonga Oto on one of the TVs, I think it was Frontline. He said in the whole of northern Uganda, there is no candidate of NUP. Remember when a candidate has got other candidates on other seats, all these other flag bearers are looking for the votes of the national flag bearer. Now you can imagine in Uganda, they are all at LC3 and every seat has been represented. I have not seen anybody of NUP. Here in Fort Portal, I think I know one or two who are just mediocres. they have just come to be seen that they are running, but they will not even get 100 votes in the whole district. Now, this shows you that there is no support, and you shouldn't downplay such a thing. If you have no structures on the ground, that means there are no people speaking for you. Of course, you will have these nothing doers who will run around, and then the next day they go to the RDC. That for us, we're just playing, we want some money so that we can leave the other party. Those ones, we have them in plenty. But serious people who are in opposition are really few. They're in few trading centers, they're in those urban areas, but Wakiso and Kampala don't mean Uganda. Or even if you add Masaka municipality or Mukono, the rest of Mukono will vote in RM, save for the municipality. And so we shouldn't downplay the power of incumbency as well. Museveni has been around for a long time. Many people know him. Museveni is a brand. And let me tell you, these things of saying young people, they have never seen war, and they didn't know the bad Uganda. My children were born in the early 20s, 2001, 1999. They understand Uganda very well. They even see the transformation and talk about it.
Margaret,
because this Uganda's transformation started around 2000,
Margaret,
or maybe 2004. And so for somebody born in 1980 to claim that he doesn't see a difference between what was happening in Uganda, what there is now, really, that's just blinding yourself to the truth. The truth is Uganda has transformed a lot, and we cannot hide ourselves from this.
Okay.
So those young people that are being enticed to run around, I don't know where their parents are. Surely, why should you run around where you know you are getting into trouble? Why would you hit a shop to loot if you were really a supporter of somebody and he's been arrested? Should you open a shop to loot? Does that get out the person? Does that get out the person out of jail? We need self-restraint. We need discipline. What authority do you have to block a road? A government road, to burn tires, to organize yourselves, ferry these tires and burn them in the middle of the road? What authority do you have? And when they come and tear gas you or do anything to you, you start complaining. It really takes two to tango. People must have some discipline. People must also obey authority. If the government has got so relaxed about what people do, so much about social liberties, there are also limits to which they will go.
Okay.
Today I was watching TV. I was shocked to see a young man who came with a canister and threw it at Bobiwine's car and blew up people.
Why aren't you shocked about the kids?
Just because you want to look for sympathy from the public. Someone from his own camp is doing these bad things such that people can hate the government. Let me tell you,
Margaret,
this has been an eye-opener to many people who were blindly following Noob. I even don't know what Nabila is doing in that club. Nabila is a very decent girl, my very sweet friend, and I cannot understand how he went to move with the hooligans. There are people who stand for nothing. I have never seen Bobi Wine articulate anything he stands for or why he wants to be president. I have never. But President Museveni talks policy, gives us a future to look forward to.
Honorable Margaret, the point has been made. Your colleague wanted to respond to the question. Your colleague Dombo, before I come back to the studio, Dombo wanted to respond to the question of is this fight or even an extended violence right from the primary, arising out of the transition discussion or succession question. Dombo, are you online?
Bwana Odongso.
Yes, respond to that question quickly and then I come back to the studio.
At times I feel so disappointed.
With who? With what?
When the change-seeking forces, who are supposed to know better, they tend up to parrot what Kyagulanyi says, instead of choosing to be a good example and teaching people what should be done. You have just said that we ask government why the internet in Butaleja is not clear. And what should we do in order to improve it? Just last week, President Museveni was commissioning the underground cable in Moroto to improve internet distribution in Uganda. Then I get disappointed when I hear a person like a lawyer who is supposed to be knowledgeable also joining the bandwagon of saying that NRM hasn't improved the distribution of social media. This is what we have been doing, and it has cost us a lot of money in order to enhance social media to move around the country and people distribute it. But when I see people who are supposed to be knowledgeable also joining a bandwagon because the social media is talking like this, and instead of teaching the people the knowledge that they have and teaching them what it takes to build a nation, and I hear them reasoning like this, then Uganda deserves better. Let all the change-seeking forces, those that know how a state is built, how a nation is built, help those young people by teaching them what it takes to build a nation. Even when they know that NRM is doing it, let them not mind about the contribution of the NRM. Let them just teach the people what it takes to build a nation. That's the only thing I wanted to say, that I felt a bit disappointed when I had that comment coming in from council or lawyer and somebody
Nicholas
in the social media who made the comment.
Is council Nicholas Opio, not a lawyer?
Opio?
Yes.
I thought it was Opio lawyer.
He is a lawyer, but not a lawyer.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay.
But Andrew, you will have to respond to the issue of the transition after Honorable Nabila, because they have all, I think they have dodged it because of, conveniently. Honorable Nabila, this, back and forth exchanges of, these are the misled, youth, urban, and all that. Then these are the ones being this and the other. Do you think that is satisfactory enough? And going forward, how is NOPE? And I need to, Nicholas talked about de-escalating, the thinking that violence must be de-escalated. Is there a plan that you have as NOPE? In this case, I'm insisting on NOPE because you are representing them. I would ask the same question of ANT, of FDC, or of any other. Do you think that NOPE has a plan that let's do this, apart from the candidate saying let's keep the track of a peaceful campaign?
Thank you. We did exactly that today. The gesture of going to the Electoral Commission and seeking, an interface with the returning officer was just to do that. So, okay, how do we move forward? Now that venues are not known by the party, the party chooses a venue and police says we will not allow you there. Then the detours, the routes. So, that is coming from NOPE. So that shows that NOPE wants to proceed with the campaign. There is no candidate who wants to be stopped at every 100 meters.
How about I saw or I read somewhere the police chief of staff, I think AIGP someone, I forget the name, as well as I think Director Operations, Mr. Ochom. I saw them after that meeting that you had this morning with Mr. Biavakama. They are insisting that as long as the SOPs from Electoral Commission says 200 people to gather for a campaign, and that anybody does not follow it, they will enforce. And enforcing means breaking the rally, trying to stop the candidate or stopping the candidate actually. but as well as using force.
All I
Do
can
you have any plan of trying to work on that?
Our plan was out there this morning.
Yeah.
So for even the police chiefs to counter it before a formal response from the Electoral Commission, because they were not the respondents.
True.
They are not the ones managing their campaign. We went to the managers of the electoral process. And for them to preempt a formal response, that shows you
Their intention.
their intention.
But you know that the IGP, Mr. Kotho wrote, was it on Monday? He wrote back in response to an earlier letter of complaint registered by the EC chairman. Okoth Chola wrote a letter which was so telling, in my view. It's telling Mr. Byabakama that, look, whether it is in an election or not, it is our role and function to make sure there is law and order and to secure the environment. So, in other words, the police was saying that you cannot assume a function which is ours, even during an election.
I think I feel sad that the IGP is being made to write letters. The tone behind such a letter is not telling of a police force that is willing to work with other institutions whose mandate the police is trying to, usurp. And when you're talking, I hear this thing about young people. Uganda is a nation of young people. So for us to even be talking about them as if they are not the majority, I think dismisses even any democratic process. Because democracy is about numbers, the population, and fortunately, or unfortunately, as some people would want to say, Uganda's majority is young people.
So it is the country, actually.
It's their country. And when we are talking about nothing doers, of course, who has made them do nothing? Are they to blame for lack of jobs? It's the duty of this government to create jobs. The other issue is about survival. Most people dismiss nature. Do you know when you see young Palestinians throwing stones at the Israelis? And they've done it for the last, I don't know how many decades. That shows that nature and human beings and animals will survive and will defend themselves. So you cannot keep hitting on these young people, and at the end of the day, you don't expect them to defend themselves. At one time, and actually that's what this government should watch out against. Let's not teach violence to young people because they have nothing to lose, like I say. And when you look at the relative, when people say, young Africans are leaving Africa and are dying in the Mediterranean.
They have nothing to lose. They would rather die.
You look at this and you think, you will tell Ugandans, oh, you don't have jobs, it's okay, keep quiet. You have somebody who is inspiring you, because whether we like it or not, Bobi Wine is inspiring youth. So for us to dismiss that inspiration as something that can be used, it's something that has changed over the last couple of elections. What's the difference between the other elections, 2016, 2011? The difference is that there's a younger person. And these young people look at Bobi Wine as a mirror of what they hope for. Hoping for something does not mean that it is matched with infrastructure and what. Hope is a very powerful tool. And for that, I think the government, like NRM, should not dismiss hope as a factor in this election. And when we are saying that Bobi Wine, I'm looking at Luka, I'm looking at Mayuge. Is Mayuge an urban district? If police deployed and these young people swam through swamps to go to Bobi Wine, I don't think that we are reading the climate. In the first place, we don't want to learn from history. I was a very avid student of history, and I still love history. The rise and fall, the fall factor is with us. Overstay, natural calamities, COVID. I think we are dismissing this. You know, we are used to saying that there was famine and that's why this kingdom fell. And you know, there was this disease. Yes, disease has always been a factor in regime change. Whether it's historical, whether it's kingdom, it's always been a factor. And I don't know why we are not saying COVID as a factor that has united families to speak one language. You know very well, this is, you know, most of our youth live in boarding schools. And for 1 year, they've been home. They've been home. A university student who is 20 years is speaking to his young brother who is 14. And they're speaking the same language to someone who is 12 years. That unity amongst youth, COVID has contributed to that. And when we are dismissing that these are young people, I don't think as a mother, mothers listen to their children. And hitting at these youth, we'll be shocked at the vote of women and how women will decide to vote. Women empathize with people who are like their children. So when they see young people, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds being shot, that block vote that the NRM premises its support on will be shaken because mothers will always think and empathize with their children.
Okay. Mr. Bobi, there is this letter of, we are talking about de-escalation of the tension and all that. The letter that the IGP wrote back to Electoral Commission, and the Electoral Commission being the candidates demanding that Electoral Commission takes charge, and the Electoral Commission had decided to write as a way of showing that I'm in charge of this. Do you think that that exchange in itself fails the call or the need for the de-escalation and makes it worse in some way?
You know, Charles, I'm a pragmatist. I want to discuss things which are going to work, which are practical. Number one, I don't think that Electoral Commission of Uganda can do anything that can make the opposition feel that it has ability to organize a free and fair election. I don't think so. That's number one. Number two, I also don't think that Uganda police, can do anything which can give the confidence to the opposition politicians that it's not serving the incumbent. That's why in these countries we need to be very careful with the power of incumbents. That even an officer who's trying to do a very professional job is always, you know, not appreciated because he has been serving the same incumbent for a number of years. So to me, I think really the issue, and you know, we are discussing the underlying issues of these presidential campaigns. The issue is not about who is referring this game, who is the chief whip, who's the security officer in charge. The issue to me is about what Ugandans think should be the country that they would want to have in the next 5 or so years. And in that, like you two guys, you and Andrew concluded here that the incumbent is going to win. That one many Ugandans know, that they are going to carry out experiment whose results they already have. But that notwithstanding, election brings this excitement and also the need to get that moment when you really also challenge this powerful incumbent. And you see him moving around the country, looking for votes. And these younger people are saying, Museveni, we are not giving it to you this time. We are with that feel good aspect. And like Honorable Nabila was saying, you know, me, I usually use data to analyze things. Look at Uganda. How is Ugandan society structured today? And this is how I also don't give a lot of chance to those who are not in charge of the state to actually win a presidential election in Uganda. Because Uganda is structured this way. Uganda is predominantly rural. 8 of 10 Ugandans live in rural area. As we are discussing here on TV, very few Ugandans have ability to watch us. Because only 25% of Ugandans have access to electricity. And you can't watch TV on, in a port. You need electricity, you need a TV.
And what percentage of that 25 have TV sets in their household?
Absolutely, very, very, when the National Household Survey indicates that it's only 8% of Ugandans who have TV. Radio is more, you know, spread around.
True.
About
79?
76.
About 79, 81.
You find that Uganda, as she said, is predominantly young. These Ugandans are mainly, and when we say young, we are not meaning these people who are calling themselves young. No.
Really young.
Ugandans are children. About 7 of 10 Ugandans are very younger people. 5 of them, they are below 15 years of age. They're not going to vote. 5 of 10 Ugandans are below 15 years. When you stretch a bit the age to 30, that is 7 Ugandans in 10. Now, these people who are calling themselves young, who are 30-something, they already not young. The median Ugandan is a very young person. So that one, never miss it. And also, you'll find that 7 of the 10 Ugandans are in subsistence agriculture. They grow their potatoes in Kabale, in Mai, Butambala there. Right now, they have eaten a very good meal. They are asleep. They are waiting for other things. You find that most Ugandans don't pay bills. Average bills, because in Uganda we have free education, we have free health care, we have free agricultural inputs, we have free bed nets, we have free immunization, have free things. It's like a welfare state. And usually Ugandans want to ask, who is actually paying for these things of ours, which we are using? For them, they don't think that, and in most cases they don't pay direct taxes. There are very few Ugandans who pay direct taxes. Most Ugandans are paying indirect taxes. By buying a kilo of sugar, they pay some VAT.
VAT on it.
But paying direct tax, because President Museveni said in the early 2000s, no more graduated tax. Forever, those people in the villages will reward that. So because of these free things, many Ugandans, whenever they turn out to vote, they are actually trying to protect that, to secure their future in that way. And those are the direct patronage, and I don't want to use the other word I was going to use, which makes it so difficult for anyone to think that they can go and mobilize support and you get all majority of Ugandans to vote for you. So these are the issues we need now to be discussing. When shall we have a conversation on what should really shape the campaigns of a presidency, the campaigns of MP, the campaigns of a mayor, the campaigns of these other local government leaders, outside the the popular kind of slogans we sing here in Kampala and Wakiso and on TV and radios, and some of these younger people get so disappointed when the results start to come in.
Okay.
And they hear that now from Karamoja it is 78 against 2% of the other, and they say they have cheated us.
Okay.
Because they don't know the structure of the society they are voting.
Okay. Very quickly, I wanted us to touch briefly on Andrew, the question that the perspective of transition or succession as being part of this, the kind of election we are seeing with violence, with a lot of tension, with a lot of passion. Do you think that is a factor in this election? Are people beginning to position themselves, and hence even their interests are along those lines? Do you think that is happening in this election?
I listened to Opio, the lawyer, make that case. There is a part of that. I think that within NRM, there may be people positioning themselves for a possible for a possible transition. Although I think after the exit of Amama Mbabazi, a lead was put on the idea of transition. I don't know whether anybody is jostling for transition. What I can say is maybe Uganda needs to think about what kind of transition are we looking for. Because I think that part of the problem of the Bobi Wine campaign, not the problem of the Bobi Wine campaign. In fact, if I was Bobi Wine, I would campaign exactly as he campaigns, by identifying Museveni as a villain, then structuring my campaign to remove a villain. It is a very easy message to sell. But if you're thinking about Uganda, we need to think of a transition from what to what. I think that Museveni would be the last factor in such a transition. The transition maybe could be from an old, tired generation, which includes, of course, Museveni, Moses Sali, and all these other octogenarian leaders, to a younger population. Now, if you talk about that, sometimes I wonder, because Museveni has created a transition in the most important component of his power, which is the military. He came with the first group of Rujema, Saleh, Elitumwine, those who were exited out of the army. Then came the second group of the Muntu and
leaving the army on this show, remember?
Yes, but they are not in. They may be there symbolically, but they're not in effective command. Then came the group of the second wave of the Muntus and the Jejo Dong and Kazini. Those left. Then came the group of the Arondas and Viraros and others. They governed them. They left. Now we have the group of David Mhozi and Mbadi and Kianda, which is a fourth transition. I feel like there has been a transition in the military.
With only one commander-in-chief.
Yes. So, but that would render him irrelevant. You see, if we had a transition like that inside NRM towards more younger people, taking control in the different aspects of the bureaucracy and all these things, that transition could be also meaningful. Of course, there is another transition we could talk about, is there was the first generation of reforms Uganda had, which was unrestrained liberalization and privatization and deregulation. Now we are beginning to realize that the consequence of that kind of reform, initially it was good, but it also produced dysfunctions like the capture of the economy by multinational capital. If we could have a transition to a much more nationally owned economy, it would be an important transition. So that if you deal with these bigger issues of the transition, Museveni becomes a small aspect of this process. And I wish, but it's not politically possible, because politics discusses appearances, it does not discuss substance. Because if we are going through all these transitions, first of all, I don't think that if you created more jobs, young people will not be angry. In fact, they will be angrier. Let me tell you why. Just imagine you're a small peasant, and this is what Gobi was talking about. If you are a peasant in the village, you live in your own house, you eat from your own garden, your interface with the market is only to go and buy maybe kerosene or cooking oil. You have very few demands on the state. You can go to UPE, you can go for USE, and you can also go for private healthcare, other public healthcare, which is free. But just imagine you come to Kampala, you have to pay rent, you have to pay for electricity and water bills. Then you have, the only way you can survive is having an income where you earn money, and that money is what makes you survive. The anxiety is crazy. Then you see people driving nice cars, wearing nice clothes, living in better houses. Your aspirations grow faster, but the opportunities available don't grow at the same rate. So there's always a mismatch between available opportunities and the level of expectations and aspirations. You're exposed to the world, so you get socially frustrated. Most of the people who are angry with Museveni are not those who have benefited the least, they're the ones who have benefited the most. Because you see, look at Bobi Wine's campaign. Bobi Wine has been extremely skillful and successful. Okay, let me not personalize it. Bobi Wine and his supporters have been extremely successful and sophisticated in the use of modern technology to spread their message. If you go on Facebook, if you go on Twitter, if you go on Instagram, wherever you go, you find them performing very well. But to be on social media gives me 4 things about you. One, you must own a smartphone. It's not cheap to own a smartphone. So you must shift a significant amount of your capital to invest in a gadget of 50,000, 80,000, 100,000 shillings. That's 1. 2, you must have data and OTT. That would OTT cost you 200 shillings a day.
Or VPN.
Data will cost you about 1,000 a day. So you are shifting money from basic things like food and whatever it is to a luxury of being on social media. The third, you must be
necessity.
See, let me tell you, if you're a peasant in the village, really, you cannot think of being on social media as being a basic necessity. Now, it shows that your life has really changed. The third thing about it, you must be able to read and write. And the fourth and most important, most of these people, maybe 90%, speak English. So it means you have been a beneficiary of UPE and USE, you are educated, you are exposed, you have a regular income to be able to participate. So you're a beneficiary of Museveni's developmental state. Those who, and you're the one who
and you must have constant power to charge.
Exactly. Now just imagine a guy in the village removing jiggers from his feet in Kamuli. He's not going to be addressing these issues, and that is the person who's voting for Museveni.
Okay.
And here for me, I think if I was in Museveni's shoes, one of the things that make me worry is that if your base of support are those peasants, you are likely to promote policies of mere welfare. If your base is not these urban, upward moving people who are aspirational, who want jobs in factories, in offices and things like that, those are not your base. You are unlikely to have policies for them, and therefore you are not likely to really be a transformative person in the long term. So I personally think that the loss of popular support in urban areas by President Museveni undermines his progressive agenda of transforming Uganda, because every government must reflect its social base. If your government's social base is peasants in rural areas who are uneducated and poverty-stricken, that is why in the last election he was promising to provide homes.
Then the quality of your transformation is also questionable.
Exactly. So I get the sense that Uganda is trapped in that sense, that the government the government's social base is the most retrogressive class in society, and the most progressive and enlightened segments of society are opposed to the government. That is why Kampala is filled with potholes, but you go to Karamoja, drive from Moroto to Nakapiripirit, there is a clean tarmac road, no cars. The Karamojong are drying sorghum and maize on the road. I think that is the dysfunction that, if you ask me, I think that Museveni's biggest strategic deficit to Uganda is the social base of his government, which is retrogressive.
Okay, we need to start winding down, but there is I needed Nicholas to respond to some of the proposals following the meeting with of NUP and Electoral Commission leadership. Some people were calling for postponing of the elections or calling it off. Do you think that is something that we must still discuss, or that's now too old and we must discuss how working within what is going on and working with the reality that we must have an election? Since we are now in it, we have already spent a lot of money as a country, we have lost lives as a country, so we would rather finish it, but ensure that we must, to use your word, de-escalate the violence and the tension. What's your view on that proposal?
Look, I do not think that President Museveni will allow for the elections to be postponed. He refused to do so when there was a serious problem of COVID. I don't think that he will postpone the election on account of the violence meted out by his own security forces. I think this election will go on regardless. But in making the point, the gesture that People Power made, is one that they are willing to engage, regardless of the nature of the engagement or the response to it from the Electoral Commission. But two, that they are also happy to play by the electoral role. I mean, the electoral rule. I think that for a very long time I've had Bobi and Joel Senyonyi speaking about hope, being peaceful, believing in the electoral process, that the electoral process can deliver change, which is a different message from what the FDC had been preaching for quite a bit. And I think that that is the only symbolism we have in that engagement. I think that that engagement, beyond the symbolism, has nothing concrete that it will give you. First, because the Electoral Commission, right from the day of nomination, showed it to you that they either don't care or can't do anything about it. Because you saw a candidate coming to the Electoral Commission for nomination barefoot. They didn't care what was wrong with him. They just nominated him. Somebody turns up 30 minutes late, instead of asking what was the problem, he's being admonished and then quickly arrested within a few meters of the nomination grounds. So the Commission has demonstrated that they're as helpless as everybody else and incapable of asserting their independence and calling the shots in this election. The only thing we have to do is for the parties to realize that you don't have to walk over dead bodies to retain power. I hope that President Museveni sleeps in his bed and turns every day upset about 82 Ugandans shot and killed, many of whom are very young people who are not involved in any violence. 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds, single mothers who are just selling food on the street, shot and killed. I hope he sleeps and turns in his bed upset about it. So far, I've not seen the evidence, because we don't have to walk over dead bodies. Those deaths are avoidable. Secondly, we have to, Charles, if we are to have any confidence in the process or what is left of it, 5.5 weeks to go, we must demonstrate a commitment to accountability. When President Museveni spoke to the nation, he says he was going to count bullets, stray bullets. The problem wasn't the bullets. The problem was the people you deployed. We know them. We have taken photographs of them. Hold them to account if you're committed to a process that will rectify what may have gone wrong. The fact that right from the massacres of Kasese to the 2001 walk to work to all the other incidents, that there's no accountability, I think for me makes things even worse. We have to have a reversal and hold security forces to account.
Okay, we usually request that our panelists here, and we have two right now, ask questions of the guests. Let me start with the Honorable Margaret Muhanga. Honorable Margaret?
Andrew, not me.
Margaret, we are now winding down. Kindly ask the guests your questions.
Yes, my first question will go to Nabila Nagai Sempala. That Honorable, if you were given a chance to be the Lord Mayor, what would you do first to change the conditions in our city? One, traffic, and two, disorganized buildings where you go to visit in the rich man's slums in Kampala and you cannot access a house, two cars cannot pass each other, and yet it's an upscale place. Three, garbage collection, which is also a problem, and the dumping grounds are always near people's homes. What will you do to rectify those crises in Kampala?
Thank you.
My other questions will go to Mr. Opio, Council Opio. That you see, I have seen you being very simplistic in so many issues. Given a chance that you are a president and there are rioters on the street, would you go to massage and cajole them? What would you do to such people? The third question, or the other question, we'll go to Andrew Mwenda. Andrew Mwenda, I know that you understand the dynamics of Uganda's politics very well. First of all, I would like to disagree with you that only the illiterate and peasants vote for Museveni. Very many smart people vote for Museveni as well. The only difference is that they fear social media. I've interacted with many young people who support the NRM in Kampala. They don't like abuses. That you post something small and they hear of those people that you call the Misrata group down on you with abuses. Check your Twitter yourself. How many people abuse you in a day? There are millions. And so many people don't post because of that. So how can we shape social media to have more reasonable people? Because every day you question me why I counter abuse them. Because sometimes I find somebody very useless attacking me and I tell them off. How can we shape social media? Because surely decent people have gotten off, especially Facebook. Because it's occupied by, I don't know.
Margaret, ask you.
I can't even call them nothing doers, but because I know they have money. Because by the time you go on social media, you have a smartphone, you can charge, you have electricity, and also you have money to buy that. So you are not poor. You are not needy. You have some money. Thank you.
So to Dombo. Margaret, a question to Dombo.
Is he still there?
Is Dombo still there?
Where did he go?
Loud and clear.
Margaret, Honorable Margaret, please ask Honorable Dombo.
He's still online, but
Where
you're
did
calling
he
him
go?
and he's not showing up. Okay. Honorable Dombo, how do you plan to up our game as NRM in terms of social media presence, and also to articulate the achievements of the NRM to the young people? Because everybody keeps saying the young people do not know that NRM has gotten this country thus far, and so that's why they are all in opposition. As a communications manager of the NRM, what strategy do you have for us to capture the young people on social media?
Honorable Dombo, start us off. 1 minute each.
Well,
answer.
thank you very much, Odongtho and the team down there. It has been a pleasure being part of the team, although I had some network issues. But I want to tell you, first and foremost, many people who sit in Kampala have prejudices that don't help them.
Producer, kindly mute Honorable Margaret's phone.
For instance, Honorable Mwenda is talking about a road which has been put in Karamoja and there is no traffic. Just yesterday, the president was commissioning a Hotel Africana in Moroto town. And this is a magnificent investment. And when you look at other investments that have come out in Karamoja, it seems many people are talking about Karamoja they last knew many years ago and don't know that Uganda is progressively changing. This narrative, during this campaign, we are busy using the media, using the radio, and using the social media. We may not do as much as somebody who is using social media to tell a lie. But the people who are convinced and believe and know that NRM has made a contribution. They have been progressively been treating, and we have been giving them information to pass it over. But this is not going to be only one person's responsibility, even when I'm the director of information. It is something that we can do together in order to ensure that NRM is going to be built. One of the things which I have noted, right now I'm with Natali, I've been meeting people, but the narrative, because of the violence which happened in Kampala, has totally changed. The younger people who are so excited about NUP here in Butaleja, they are all cursing and saying, is this honestly where we are going? There are young people who are killed from Butaleja. They were killed in Kampala and they brought the dead bodies. And people asking themselves, is this the change that is being promised? So, even when the changes must happen, what we have to do is provide correct information, give the narrative, and support the presidential candidate, given the information that he's passing over to all media houses whenever he's conducting the campaigns.
Thanks a lot. Next is Andrew. Andrew, respond to your question.
Well, two things I want to respond to Margaret. You see, of course, I do not mean that the supporters of NRM are predominantly, rather are only the uneducated. In fact, I think that if you look at Class A and Class B, the top tier of Ugandan society, they will most likely, whether the business community, the professionals and others, at the highest end of the society, they support NRM, and the bottom. And the NRM also enjoys a middle. But the opposition increasingly supports urban people. That does not mean that there are no rural people who also support the opposition. Perhaps what I meant is, where is the president's strongest base of support? It is in rural areas. Where is the biggest source of support for the opposition? It is in urban areas. Of course, there is also a problem with the opposition themselves. The opposition's strongest base are professionals, and then underemployed, unemployed youth and students. They do not have the support of the business class, of agricultural, of bankers, let's say, of large agricultural investors. So they represent also a class whose interests can best be served by patronage from the state. You need a government with the strong alliances with the private sector, which I think that to a certain degree, this is to contradict myself, the Museveni administration has that minimum connection, so that it understands the interests of industrialists and puts in place public policies and political institutions to promote their investments and therefore to be able to create jobs. I personally think that the biggest weakness of the Museveni administration, which will be reproduced by a Bobi Wine administration if ever he won an election, is this tendency to rely on international donor institutions. The more you rely on them, they tend to promote policies that favor multinational capital. Then multinational capital comes here only to make money and ship it abroad. Just look at our country today. Whether we are building a road, a dam, or anything, it's done by the Chinese or somebody from outside. Whatever profits they make, whatever materials they do, everything is sent abroad. Look at the commanding heads of our economy, whether it's the banks, the telecommunication companies, the manufacturing businesses, everything is owned by Chinese and other multinational capital. I think this is the most prostituted economy somebody can see. So even when we calculate the wealth of this country, a lot of this wealth is not owned by Ugandans. It is so important for us to have a government which promotes domestic or national ownership of the economy. If we never do that, it will be extremely difficult to achieve the kinds of transformation we see in China, or we see today in Vietnam and other countries where there is strong national control of the economy, ownership of the economy.
Okay. Nicholas.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Margaret, for your questions. I think you're better at asking questions than debating them. I think your journalistic self shone in there. But secondly, let me apologize to you if I sounded simplistic. I was speaking to people out there. I didn't want to talk about the dating life of a South Korean leader because the ordinary people out there don't really care. It doesn't make sense to them. But when you want to turn on the intellectual discourse, we can do that if you have time. But to your question, first, I don't want to take you through what is a 9-stage process of crowd management that is used in international human rights law, because my first response will not be to shoot and kill people, because there are many stages before you go through until you reach the point of using lethal force. The police has, or the army has in its disposal, countless means of dealing with crowd control. But secondly, and more importantly, and I continue to make the point that people like Margaret are bastardizing the vast majority of people who are exercising the right to protest by lumping them as rioters. Because the people who were protesting had a legitimate political concern, the treatment of their leader. Now, we don't want to talk about that. We call them rioters. I think we must distinguish and discuss the concerns that people had by going to the street. But even more important than that for me is the mentality of the security forces. I think we have to agree that everybody has the right to exercise their freedom, and that one's exercise of a freedom will in some way or the other inconvenience the other. To argue that because there are market women selling, nobody should go there, is itself to defeat the exercise of the right. The reason the state exists is to ensure that there is as minimal disruption as possible, to facilitate the exercise of the right, not to defeat it. And that in any crowd, if there are people in a crowd exercising their right and there's somebody in there causing trouble, the duty of the state is to go and pick that person, but not to indiscriminately shoot at or tear gas a crowd exercising their right. So we'll go back to the human rights basic. The belief that every life matters, the belief that every right matters, and that everybody must be allowed to exercise that right, and that the duty of the state, Margaret, is not to shoot and kill citizens, but to, as much as possible, engage in a process of ensuring a peaceful exercise of the right. Killing people doesn't ensure any peace. When you have non-uniform individuals shooting at individuals, at people on the street, shooting at poor women on the streets, it doesn't really bring the peace. In fact, it is counterproductive to the NRM, because the families of those you have killed, I don't think they are excited about voting for Museveni. Lastly, Charles, the last statistics I read about ambulance counts, this country has 421 ambulances. Guess how many police trucks they have for dispersing riots? What is more important?
Good question to think about. Honorable Nabilayo.
Yeah, I want to thank Margaret for giving me an opportunity to talk about my candidature as a Lord Mayor, aspirant.
And you call Lord Mayor or Lady Mayor, actually?
Well, the law has Lord Mayor as a name.
Be the first female Lord.
Yes. So all I can say is that Kampala, over the last 10 years, under the new dispensation of the KCCA and as it being an authority, has had one leader in the KCCA Act to implement, to try out, to act out, accept, and take on the mandate as enshrined in the KCCA Act. What will I do differently, or what do I want to do, is to provide leadership as mandated. We've seen for the last 10 years the incumbent running away from the mandate under which he campaigned, under which he took oath, and turning around and say, this law cannot apply. I've considered that as a betrayal of the oath. And also, when you nominate under a law. You know exactly that this is the job I want. This is the law that is, existing, and as I'll try, I'll use it to make a difference as a lawyer, as a Lord Mayor of Kampala. Margaret asked about the traffic, disorganized buildings. You know that KCCA, as now, even as we are campaigning, is duly constituted. The only difference that every 5 years, the citizens' perspective gets a renewal by electing the Lord Mayor and councillors, Lord Councillors, to put a human face and also to put the interests of the people into the technical wing. The directorates, we have the Directorate of Physical Planning, we have, you know, every other directorate that is working under the able leadership of the Executive Director. And the only difference is that we have somebody, like I say, I want to see children's spaces in Kampala. When you look at Kampala, it's not like, it's like children don't exist. All the spaces for children are done away with. We want to see more greener spaces. We want to see Kampala talk about the issues that need to be addressed.
Okay.
And that's what maybe I would do differently. Thank you, Margaret, for asking.
Thanks. Let's have Bobi ask the final questions and we get out of this
I'll
place.
be quick. I will start with Andrew, being the old man of the clan.
Which clan, by the way?
The clan of Batoro.
It's the African clan. All Africans.
Andrew,
He's wise to know that the
You are-
clan, he mentions the clan that doesn't exist.
you were a terrific analyst, and over years you've been following these issues. Now we have the big issue of millennials. The millennials, globally, they are known to be having particular features. They tend to be cynical to authority. They need special treatment.
They are defiant
They are confident. They are rebellious. And also,
across the world.
they're entitled, yeah, across the world. Now, I would want you to, in very few words, I know you have many, to help us understand a millennial being the median voter in Uganda today. What strategy would you give to the presidential aspirants to really fish out this millennial, to support them? And to counsel, as a human rights activist, what do you how do you rate the human rights record really of the incumbent government relative to past governments of Uganda and also to other governments within the Great Lakes region? And to Honorable Nabila, I think for you, other than winning the forthcoming election, especially the presidency, what is the other objective that is making NUP running for this election? In case you don't win, what other really take home are you getting from this election as a new party?
Dombo Online.
And to Mr. Dombo, I would want you to comment on the strategy you are going to use as NRM to get the running narrative right now off the campaign trail so that you can have your fantastic manifesto message getting to the voter out there.
Let's start with Dombo so that we end with the studio. Honorable Emmanuel, can you
Professor.
start us to respond to the final question?
Thank you very much, Professor. Right now, we are relying on the media, given that is the only way we can, as much as possible, reach out to the voters. When you look at the online platforms, the main media and their online platforms, we have local bulletins. For instance, in northern Uganda, we have a local bulletin called the Techeng. which is serializing the achievements of NRM in the Luo language. We have tried it in the local languages also, in Bukede and other media houses. But also when you look at the media landscape, you discover that there are more people listening to radio than there are using any other media house. So we have a team of panelists who have gone out, and they're also going to go out to go and explain to the people what the NRM manifesto says. What is it that we have achieved? What is it that we plan to do? And if there are any issues that we have not been able to do as we had promised previously, we shall also explain, because that's what good governance is all about.
Okay. Thanks, Honorable Dombo. Let's get back here. Honorable Nabila, your response.
Yes, thank you, the panelist who has asked Mr. Gobi. Doctor?
Not yet.
Ramadan. Okay. The objective of NOP running for this election, well, the primary goal of any party is to field candidates and win elections. And that's what we are trying to do through our presidential, parliamentary, and local electoral candidates. The other issue is NOP, to me, is freshness in the recycled electoral environment in this country. Like we said, when I was in FDC, FDC had a lot of recycled individuals who had garbage from previous engagements in government and carried it on into a new party. What I can say is that NUP does not have a lot of garbage and baggage from previous, cliques and interests that have, could kill a new party. And as somebody who's been in a party and I just joined NOP, I feel its freshness. The other one is to create a conducive environment to the return of constitutionalism in this country. It's one of the bedrock of NOP to say, return to like the term limit issues, for leaders not to perpetually hold on to office. I think that's one of the tenets of NOP.
Or the delusions.
Tenets, because you cannot premise. When there is a new baby, you don't curse it. You wish it well. And NOP is one of that. Baby. It's a party. It provides hope. So we can hope that maybe in the next, decade, we can see a return to order and democracy in this country through a fresh party like NOP.
Thank you, Honorable Nabila. Council Nicholas Opio.
You're stuck in your lawyer, I can see. First of all, thank you for the question. On the bookshelves in my office are 15 volumes of the verbatim recording of the Justice Oda Commission report that was commissioned by the NRM government when they came into power. I've read every single page of those documents. If you've read them, you would see in so many ways similarities between what happened in past governments and what is happening in this government. Extrajudicial killings, forced disappearances, the use of torture as a mechanism for suppression and investigations. And I think that because President Museveni has been here longer, perhaps the body counts might even be more than the ones I saw in those reports. And so if you ask me whether there is any difference between the current administration and the past, the only difference is that we are elites that are in power, people who are more sophisticated, understand the art of manipulation, the art of disinformation, so that when the police shoots and kills people on the street, you have a police spokesman who is well educated coming to gaslight the public about what has happened. We have created institutions of accountability that in fact don't even function. You had the Uganda Human Rights Commission now several months without a chairperson, and in fact without donor support that commission can only pay salaries and not do anything. That could be the difference. But in terms of body count, in terms of the human rights records, I would want to invite you to look at a very detailed report by Amnesty International between 1986 and 1990 in northern Uganda. You would shed tears. It's the same things that the past governments did. You should go and look at cases of innocent civilians being buried alive. Able-bodied men, they dug a grave, big pit, and put them there and covered them. These incidents are almost the same. In respect of the Great Lakes region, you cannot help but look at the constant factor in the Great Lakes region. It's President Museveni. Whether it is Congolese politics, whether it is Rwandan politics, the constant factor in these regional in this region is President Museveni. The trail of massacres in eastern DRC, the pillage in eastern DRC, and our role in instituting a new government in Kinshasa, our role in Rwanda. President Museveni was on camera denying ever supporting people in Rwanda, but a few days the facts came to bear. And so he has been the constant factor in the Great Lakes region, and so we cannot discuss the region without him as a factor. Perhaps the exception might be Kenya and Tanzania, where you see a remarkable difference, both in terms of the democratic progression, but also in terms of economic growth and the changing lives of people. I think that when the dust settles, President Museveni's legacy, really in terms of real legacy, human rights legacy, may not be any different from Idi Amin or Obote. Body counts after body counts. The use of violence, the use of... Just go to Luzira prisons, Charles. 85% of the population in that prison are young people in their most productive age, locked away. Some for petty crimes, many for now over 5,000 for COVID violations, locked away. Their lives ruined. Their productivity is being, our country is being denied their productivity. So I think for me, when the history is written, Museveni's legacy in human rights will not be as beautiful as we want to think.
Okay. Thanks. Let's have Andrew wind it up for us.
Well, before I answer Ramadan's question, I cannot let the comment by my great-grandson Nicholas go unchallenged. First of all,
the comparison of Museveni to Amin.
Yes,
it's
because
my view.
yes, but I did challenge your view. I personally think that Museveni has been one of the most influential leaders in post-colonial Africa, if not the most influential. In Uganda, he has stabilized the political dispensation and put the economy on a trajectory of long-term growth, which has allowed state consolidation. Uganda borders Congo to the east, where you have an absentee state in most of eastern Congo. To the north, it is bordered by Sudan, or South Sudan, which was also had an absentee state in the south. Then you had Rwanda and its genocidal politics. So we were really in a bad neighborhood. To secure this country, I don't think has been an easy task, and it took a person of his extraordinary skill to do so. The cost of securing Uganda, because if you're a rebel and you wanted to attack Uganda, you could assemble in Sudan, you could assemble in Congo. That lawlessness or statelessness in those areas was a strategic risk to Uganda. Therefore, the cost, I have a criticism of human rights organizations because they decontextualize human rights. They make it a religion, failing to recognize that building states, the states of Europe were not built through kissing. People are not kissing. There is a cost to establishing stability, and that cost also comes with mistakes. There is a soldiers may have made the mistake in Mukura or in Borochora, where they buried people alive. this is not to excuse those mistakes. It is simply to recognize that any human endeavor, each one of us seated here, I'm sure in anything good we have tried to do, we have also made mistakes. So,
are you saying the burying of people alive was a mistake?
I think that the errant, you see, if you look at the way Museveni has used violence, he has used it in a targeted, deliberate way. It has not been the kind of arbitrary violence that ran amok during the UNLA days. So, but even within that deliberate violence, many violations could have happened because you could not control every last thing. I will give you an example. Surely the United States you have seen at Abu Ghraib, there are many mistakes the US government has done. By the way, even Canadian troops, they have been sent to Somalia and other places, they have made mistakes. So you cannot simply say that therefore Canada is an evil state like Idi Amin. I would not compare Museveni with Idi Amin. I think that he has been one of the most, if not the most influential leader in Africa, who has stabilized a country that lives in a very bad neighborhood. Now let me come to the very difficult question of Bobi. I just even don't know whether it's possible to win over these millennials. I must mention that by the way, millennials must have been born before 1996. So any millennial now is more than 24 years old. People think millennials are people born after 2000. That's not true.
No.
That's the Zen generation.
Yes,
now.
so before 96. These are people aged say 24 and 35. If you take those people, I don't know whether it is possible to win them over completely. But I have a criticism of the NRM. I think NRM has made very little effort, very, very little effort, if at all, to make A, an emotional connection to these young people, B, to offer them a future. You see, a government, and this is, I want NRM people to listen to me, a government does not need to really, really deliver necessarily on material benefits to a given population segment. The most important thing is to create hope, to create a sense that we are working for you. I have been able to relate to other governments which really deliver less than NRM, but people believe. I would want to see the president of Uganda on a regular basis being able to meet leaders of different youth communities of Uganda, where there are babas and metal workers, carpenters, and make them get a sense that they're involved in his grand vision of what he wants to achieve.
But Andrew, do you know that realistically in life, it is easier to show people reality done, physically done things, achievements, than actually making them believe in hope?
I think that, let me give you an example. What is Bobi Wine's strength? If you listen to Bobi Wine, I'm really sorry to say this, he's empty on policy.
I think you're so stuck on Bobi Wine.
Yes, but no, yes, because I think he's the most serious candidate, the biggest challenger to Museveni. So we have to talk about him. The way he talks about Museveni. The Bobi Wine people don't want us to talk about him, but they want to talk about Museveni. So let me talk about Bobi Wine. If you listen to him, he is empty on policy, but he has succeeded in just one thing. He has created hope. He has said, look, are you a youth? Are you anxious? Are you feeling unfree, beaten, dispossessed? There is a problem. The problem is Yoweri Museveni. That's the villain. And the solution is change. I don't think he needs to define tax policy, industrial policy, and all these things we ask for, which a president needs to, a presidential candidate should have. But his message is powerful and it is resonating with many young people. They may not constitute the majority to vote him to become president, but he has been able to create a significant momentum.
Okay.
And I feel like NRM seems to be ideologically exhausted. It has lost faith in its own vision, and because it has lost faith in its own vision, it is incapable of projecting and articulating a vision of hope to young people so they can believe that somebody is working for us.
Okay. Thank you so much, Andrew Mwenda. Thank you, Council of Hill. Thank you so much, Honorable Navila. And thank you, Bobi. Through Zoom, I want to thank Honorable Margaret Muhanga and Honorable Emmanuel Dombo for finding time to be on the show.